Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Upkick MMA episode 461. I am Brennan. UFC Fight Night, Cop vs. Almeida. Prelims. It's going to be Mario Pinto, Austen Lane. That's going to be the featured prelim. We're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down round by round, go through all of the fights on the prelims, break all of those down. If you like this kind of thing, subscribe to the channel. That way the next video is coming out. I'd really appreciate it. And if you do find yourself liking this video, hit the like button. All right. Standard YouTube proselytizing out of the way. That word doesn't sound good, huh? Austen Lane versus Mario Pinto. All right. God, Austen Lane. It's just standard athletic heavyweight, right? With a lot of holes in his game. We've seen it before. Former football player, high-level football player. I think he played in, I forget what college he played for. But we've seen this, I don't know how many times in the UFC. And most of the time it ends up like this. Low kicks are there for both guys. Lane with the first definitive movement or moment in the round with the pressure and getting into the clinch. Didn't do much with it, but then Pinto, I wrote it down wrong. Counters with the jab and the big right hand. Lead left hook from Lane and then a pause and then a right hand that drops Pinto for a second. Lane looking better, landing more. 10-9. He really needs to watch that right hand coming back at him, though, because Pinto's throwing it with nasty intentions, so I was worried that Lane was going to get caught and get knocked out, which he has been done before. Outstruck him here 20-7 in this first round. Second round, Pinto turning the pressure on and getting kind of crazy, and then they just start trading, right? They just start slanging and banging. No technique. Technique be damned. Pinto starts shelling up. It looked like Lane was getting the better of the exchange. He was outstruck him in this round, even 12-6. But then Lane with his hands way too low. I'm writing his hands are way too low, and if he gets in one of these exchanges again, he's going to get knocked out. And then of course a right hand puts him right to sleep, like you saw in the thumbnail. You know, it is what it is. It's a heavyweight fight. You can't. Heavyweight has probably the lowest floor in the UFC for male divisions, right? It's the easiest division to get into. You have bloated middleweights, bloated welterweights at some point. At some points, just being, because at 170 and up, you got a lot of guys who are 6 foot tall. Right, 6'1", and that's pretty common at heavyweight as well. You get a lot of guys who are 6'1", 6'2", and yeah, then once you get into the 6'4", 6'5s, now you're looking at light heavyweight and possibly some middleweights. Right, but you got a lot of heavyweights who should not be at heavyweight. They're just bloated middleweights, guys who don't have control over their diet. Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they choose to be heavy so they can fight at heavyweight because they know it's easier to get into the UFC or stay in the UFC as a heavyweight. But like I said, it has the lowest floor of any male division in the UFC. And if you're an athletic guy, this is like, you remember back in the day, for those of you guys who like the NBA, if you were a 7-footer who was relatively athletic, you could make it to the NBA pretty easy, right? I forget what it was. There's a stat out there, and I don't remember what it was, but like the percentage of men who are over 7 foot is like 0.0, like I forget what percentage of the population. It's some insane number, like way less than 1%, right? And then the percentage of the American population over 7 foot that's in the NBA was half of that. Half the American 7-footers at one point were in the NBA. Doesn't mean they were all all-stars? Absolutely not. There's just a big body that they could throw in there. Now, the game has changed quite a bit, and the NBA isn't what it used to be as far as that. I don't mean the NBA is bad. It's fun to watch. I'm a huge NBA fan. But the heavyweight right now in the UFC is like that. If you are a relatively athletic guy who weighs over 205 pounds, you could make it to the UFC, realistically. I'm not joking. There is a good chance. And now, if you're a big dude, like coming from a sport, like football, basketball, you're a big guy, and you want to put your mental health, your cognitive ability on the line for some mediocre bucks, and then with the possibility of making some big bucks eventually, well, the UFC is a realistic option, and that's what we get, right? Do I think Austen Lane is a bad fighter necessarily? No, I don't think he's bad. But do I think his skill set and athletic ability would allow him to be in the UFC in many other divisions? Possibly at 185, right? If he was a 185er, he could probably cut it. But he would be cut. Once you find out like his skill set just ain't there and he just doesn't have the chin for it, he'd be cut. But at heavyweight, you can hang around for years and do this. So I do hope the best for him. I do hope he puts it together. I do hope that he finds his rhythm, finds his grooves, finds his training partners, finds his system that allows him to become more competitive at heavyweight, because god dang do we need it. Heavyweight division is in shambles. Thanks, John Jones. It's not just his fault. All right. Chepe Mariscal versus Ricardo Ramos. Fantastic fight. Fantastic. Mariscal is a goddamn beast, and now he's got his diet in check. He found out he was allergic to tomatoes and tomatoes and oh man, what was it? Not almonds, pistachios. And anyway, it seems insignificant, but when you have like a real bad gut inflammation and dietary issues, cutting weight it becomes exponentially harder. Right. Not only are you dealing with the normal, fighting the human body's normal tendency to retain all the calories and save all the energy that you put into it. Right. That's the fat storage and everything else. Like your body is naturally trying to keep all that anyway. So you're fighting that as you try to cut weight. And then your bodies want to hold on to water as they do a water cut. You're also fighting inflammation and diet, like gut health and just a whole bunch of stuff that just doesn't allow your body to even let go of the water now, because it's trying to hold on to it. To like that inflammation is your body's way of fighting off certain things. So anyway, gets the shit in check. He's got a 6-pack now, looks fantastic, comes out like a bat out of hell with the pressure, changing levels, coming up at the top over the hooks, and Ramos just content to circle on the outside as Mariscal just landing a right hand, getting in tight, defending a takedown. Like he defends takedowns, fights off a calf slicer, slaps him. Mariscal just right in his face with those hooks, and Ramos looks kind of bewildered. Right? Ramos already looks tired with 14 seconds left in this first round, gets thrown to the ground. Mariscal hip riding him and landing some good short hooks. You know, to get in a leg, they get in a leg battle, giving Ramos a break, but they're back up with 20 seconds left. 1:14 left, my bad. And then Mariscal keeping the pressure on. I had him winning this round easily, 28-15 for striking numbers, clearly a 10-9 round for him. Second round, Mariscal with the pressure, kicking the legs out and then pressuring into the clinch, and just Mariscal landing a nasty, nasty left hand and keeps landing him again, super clean. Ramos landing a spinning elbow, causing a cut above the right eye. Best strike of the fight for him. Ramos with a little bit more energy down the stretch, but just not landing much, and Mariscal turns it back up and starts to unload. 42-8 for striking numbers in favor of Mariscal. Fantastic finish to this round. 20-18. Last round, Ramos can't find any real success. Even when he lands, Mariscal is coming back over the top, lands more, gets a takedown. Most competent round for Ramos, with Mariscal playing it kind of safe, but with 10 seconds left, Mariscal goes crazy, a couple of shots, and takes it for me. Outstrikes him 15-14. That last little flurry did it for me. He was going to lose this round, in my opinion. So I had him winning 30-27. All three judges had it the same way. Good job, Chris Lieben. Not a hard fight to score. Anyway, a fantastic finish. All right. Great performance. I'm excited to see him fight. Lucas Almeida taking on Danny Silva. Lucas Almeida weighing in at 148, 2 pounds over the fucking limit. Oof. Every fighter this year who has missed weight has lost. All 4 of them. Let's see. This was the first one by decision. The rest of them, I think, have been by finish, as far as my records show. I'd have to go back and confirm one of them. I think I might have missed one. All right. Almeida, it's a tentative back and forth start. Almeida content to stay on the back foot. Both guys landing low kicks, and that's about it. Silva digging his in slightly more. Silva countering the low kick with 3-hook combo up top, landing super clean. Almeida trying to alleviate some pressure with kicks to the legs and the body, but Silva's pressure just pushing right through it. Almeida finally landing a clean strike up top with a lead hook as he backs up Silva, but then Silva getting in tight and landing more again. Almeida made it closer down the stretch, but those big hooks that Silva put on him put him way out in front, in my opinion. 24-17 for striking numbers in favor of Silva. Clearly his round. Second round, Silva has done a really decent amount of damage to that lead leg, but he doesn't use it a ton because he has a changed stance. So they're fighting southpaw conventional, so he can't really attack that lead leg like he normally wants to. Almeida exits with his head straight up in the air, and I thought for sure Silva was going to put him out. He just never found that killing blow. Silva landing with those tight hooks, moving forward, and Almeida will plant and try to counter, but Silva shells up really well, avoids most of the damage coming back, and then keeps the pressure on. Silva ends the round with a takedown, a couple shots. It should be his round, 36-29. In favor of Silva. I have him up 20-18. Last round. This round looks a lot like the first two, but Almeida able to stay off the fence a little bit more, able to throw more hands, but Almeida, despite having his best round and Silva not finding those big moments, it just still was a very close round. I did have Almeida outlanding him here in this last round, and he did 28-22. I did give Almeida this last round. Looking at the scorecards, what the fuck? All right. Remember how I said I don't trust a lot of these guys? Anthony Manis. He gave the second round to Almeida? So Mike Bell and I saw it the same way, which is rare, but I thought it was pretty easy to call. Ron McCarthy, copycat over here. And Anthony Manis, I don't know what the hell he was watching in round two. One good shot that Almeida landed, and didn't knock him down or anything. That's a bad scorecard, guys. It's going to go unknown, untalked about, fight night, buried on the prelims. No one's going to talk about that. That's a bad scorecard. All right, J.J. Aldrich taking on Andrea KGB Lee. Oh, this was a real downer. Just because it was a kind of a boring fight, and Lee going with the low kicks to the bot and body countering with the tight 1-2 up top. Aldrich breaks up the back and forth with a takedown at 245. They get right back up. Some exchanges over and over, and Aldrich partially drops her with a 1-2. Is a little bit off balance, but if you count that as a drop, Lee might have landed more volume, but Aldrich did more damage this round. So she didn't. It was 21-18 in favor of Aldrich. This is clearly Aldrich's round, so I had it 10-9. Second round, literally the same round as the first, right? They pause, they kick. There's a kick for Lee, and then Aldrich comes over the top with a counter 1-2. That's literally all that happened. Same thing. The volume could take it for Lee, but she didn't land. I thought Lee was landing more often, but Aldrich landed 25-15. Clearly her round 20-18. Last round, same thing. Could go either way because Aldrich didn't have any definitive moments, and also the striking numbers were relatively close. But I gave this one to Aldrich as well. Saul D'Amato and Junichiro Kamijo both gave it 30-27. Ron McCarthy gave that last round to Lee, which is not a bad one. When you watch it live, it was a lot closer than the numbers it dictate. Yeah, Lee did step it up in that last round, but like I said, just we don't need to talk about it anymore. Kind of boring. All right, Charles Johnson versus Ramazan Temirov. Dude, the way they talk about Charles Johnson when he's fighting, right? It's not that they're not complimentative. It's just the way that they dismiss his offense as he's moving backwards, or his ability to kind of they're talking about shots that land, but they're not landing. They're just not. And I don't know. Johnson taking the center early, trying to track down Temirov, but the roles reverse. Temirov starts winning the lead, landing that lead hook. A huge overhand right catches him just a bit and then Johnson starts playing counter, finding the mark with that front kick to the face as he dodges and blocks most of the Temirov power shots. Temirov with a ton of explosions, catching the body and the guard. If his cardio holds up, he's going to be a problem, right? But it didn't. Spoiler alert. Johnson turning it up with 60 seconds left, and he's having a hard time trying to get through all of the hooks and the spinning shit of Temirov. Temirov with the big shots and the pressure for most of this round. Let's see if his cardio holds up. I had him winning this round 10-9, so 21-15 for striking numbers in favor of Temirov. Second round, Johnson keeping the center this round early, and driving into the clinch in the cage. Even when Johnson avoids the big shots, he's just not able to land anything big of his own. Good front kicks to the body and a couple uppercuts, but no big headshots, right? Temirov is on his bike now, starting to slow his output with 2 minutes left and still not able to land anything for Johnson. Temirov was able to land enough when he would plant, and he did outland him here 19-14. Johnson was trying to catch him. He was running away quite well. Very effective bicycle work. Last round, Johnson looks like he knows he needs a finish, and he's staying in his face, leaving himself open for some shots coming back at him, but that started to fade too. Temirov just couldn't find it, and Temirov is not a 5-round fighter with this strategy. He's starting to retreat, literally running away, trying to clinch, doing anything but other than fighting. Uppercuts and hooks to the body up top for Johnson, in tight. He really he needs to keep this pressure up. This was the most one-sided round in this fight. And if this fight was scored as a whole, which it's not, so that's not the game we're playing here. I'm not going to do that. It's just unfortunate that Johnson he's one of those guys who falls victim to the 3-round, 5-round system that we have, right? He really comes on late. His cardio holds up. He breaks people down over time with his volume. And if he doesn't win one of the first 2 rounds, he's always in a hole in that 3rd round. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, because someone like him who can excel in a 5-round fight might never be given that opportunity. And I like Charles Johnson. He's coming off of 4 wins over Azat Maksum, Jake Hadley. That's a good win. Joshua Van, great win. And then Sumer Darje, which is, again, a good win. I think you got to give him a main event. He needs to get a win together, give himself a main event opportunity to fight for 5 rounds so we can see what he does and how his game plan works and how his fighting style works over 5 rounds, because I do think he is a 5-round fighter, not a 3-round fighter. Looking at the judges' scorecards, they all saw it the same way I did. Saw the amount of Brian Minner, Tony Weeks all gave those first 2 rounds to Temirov. So it's like I've gone back and forth about this before. I've talked about the debate between Chael Sonnen is Chael Sonnen, so he said, 5 rounds, 3 rounds is arbitrary, it's stupid, right? And I'm not going to argue with the scoring system. I'm not here, I'm not going to die on that hill. I don't care about it in a way that I think it's so deleterious to the MMA world or the sport or even the entertainment value. I don't think a 3-round scoring system is necessarily bad. I don't think it's necessarily good. I think open scoring would be better, blah, 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 blah. We've had all these talks. I'm actually specifically talking about how the UFC schedules. So they have shown in recent years that the 5-round thing is arbitrary. So obviously it was always title fights back in the day. The only 5-round fights were title fights. Okay, why? Doesn't matter. You can go through the history of the UFC and why they chose to do that, but why they picked 5 and not 7 or 6. You don't want an even, because then you can have split decisions more often. So I get the odd number, but why 5 not 7? Right? Why not 1 round? Why not 2? Okay, whatever. Second, they started to add 5-round fights as any main event. And then they started doing fight nights all the time, right? So now you went from 12 to 15 UFCs a year to 30, then 40, and now all of a sudden you've got a lot more 5-round fights. And then they made it fights that they wanted to be 5 rounds. So now we have not main events, not title fights, but they're being scheduled for 5 rounds, whether it be for the BMF belt or just because they want to. And now, so there are certain fighters in the UFC roster, like Charles Johnson, who excel, or what I will hazard to guess that will excel in the 5-round format, but are just good at the 3-round format. And then you have guys who excel at 3 rounds, but would fail at 5 or only mediocre to good at 5 rounds. So you can have a guy like this matchup right here, like Temirov, a guy who just blows his wad in the first round and a half, and then is playing defense for, does enough just in those first 2 rounds to win those rounds, and then just is on his bicycle and playing defense for the last round and wins decisions. And then when he goes to 5 rounds, he has to do the same thing, but now he has to figure out a different strategy. So maybe he is a 5-round fighter with a different strategy, but there are some guys who just cardio will not hold up for 5 rounds. So Johnson, on the other hand, when he encounters a guy like Johnson, who is the exact opposite, most fights in the UFC are 3 rounds. And most people who make it to a title don't fight a ton of 5-round fights before they get their title shot. They might fight 1, they might fight none. So you can have a guy like Temirov who beats a bunch of guys who would beat him in 5-round fights, but it wouldn't matter because they're not fighting 5 rounds, makes it to 1 5-round fight or not, and then gets a title shot. Whereas Charles Johnson is struggling in 3 rounds, not able to string together, although he did just string together 4 excellent wins. But you have a guy like him who has more of a struggle with his style and his abilities to win consistently in 3-round fights. And because his popularity and his history, he hasn't ascended to that 5-round status consistently, right? There's some guys, just because of their name value, they're thrown in as main events all the time in these fight nights. So they get 5 rounds to show their skills. Charles Johnson hasn't gotten to that level yet. So he might, hem and haw, or not hem and haw, he might bounce back and forth up and down the rankings and never get an opportunity to show what he can do over 5 rounds, which is unfortunate. And that's just the game we play, but that's what I'm saying is, like, it's unfortunate that that's the case when you have a guy who's clearly a 5-round fighter and a guy who's clearly a 3-round fighter fight each other for 3 rounds or 5 rounds. Or no, 3 rounds, because 5 rounds is ultimately the goal, because you have to fight a 5-round fight to win a title, right? Doesn't mean you have to go all 5. You could finish the guy in 2 rounds or 1 or 3, whatever. Not 4, though. Can't finish 4. It's stupid. But you get fights like this where you see a guy come on late and just beat the piss out of somebody in the 3rd round. They don't give it a 10-8, because even though 10-8 is a guy who clearly wins a round, I don't know how you could win that round more clearly without killing the guy. And you don't give him a 10-8, so you can't get a draw. You're not going to give him an extra round, obviously, because that's stupid. So what does a guy like Charles Johnson do? He has to adjust his style, and now he opens himself up early, and he isn't able to compete the way he normally does. And now he exposes himself to more counters. So, he has to change his style to address the 3-round thing, which is not the ultimate goal. Whereas other guys, they have to adjust their 3-round style to the ultimate goal, which is 5 rounds. I'm rambling now. Anyway, if you stuck around this long, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe, man. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, hit the like button. Thank you guys for stopping by. It means a lot to me. Hope you guys have an amazing week. Hope you guys enjoyed the fights. Love you guys. Peace.